You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California. Member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Another week has gone by, folks, and there's some interesting news that we can share. As of today, I believe all of the market analyses for Santa Clara County, Morgan Hill, San Jose, Gilroy are all out and up on YouTube and on my website at soldbyrobert.com, so feel free to check those out. We had an amazing August in San Jose in terms of just market flips, in terms of average sales price, so go check that out. I think that's the big news, right? And the other big news is that Santa Clara County saw the same thing, just to a lesser degree. So feel free to head on over to soldbyrobert.com or to the YouTube channel and check those out. One thing you'll want to also check out is the coffee and real estate replay on YouTube. The reason is because that's where if you're somebody who wants to get that 10,000 foot view and you want to see Santa Clara County compared to San Jose, compared to Morgan Hill, and compared to Gilroy, that's going to give it to you. It's a really good way to really get a much broader feel. In this week's show, we're going to talk about sort of the general what's going on with interest rates, what's going on with anticipation on the economy. We've got a few items to hit today, and I want to try to keep this at a reasonable length. I know people prefer, at least on the video side, to being a little shorter. I also would like to call out my podcast listeners. Thank you very much for continuing to be a listener to the show. And as I go through these, I'm going to make a much more concerted effort to describe what I'm showing that folks are seeing on the video side. Now, if you're a podcast listener and you would like to watch the show as a video on YouTube, you can go over to the YouTube channel and check that out. Just go over to YouTube, search on Rebel Broker, and I'm guaranteeing you will find it. So you can check it there. Okay, let's go ahead and I was trying to put these in an order that would create a nice flow. I think these are all good tidbits of info that are worth checking out. So let's go ahead and look at these. Let's go ahead and put my ugly face on the other side so they're not in the way of things. Oh, well, okay. Guess what we're not going to do. Jeez. All right. We will just stick to it this way. We'll just make me a little smaller. How's that sound? All right. So this is directly from Fannie Mae. This is the fanniemae.com website, and the headline is Housing and Interest Rates Continue to Suggest Recession Likely in 2023. So, yes, I mean, interest rates are continuing to rise, and they have to fight inflation, right? And we've discussed this a bunch of times, but the fact that Fannie Mae is coming out and saying recession in 2023, everybody out there, the talking point is that we're not officially in recession based on a broader definition of the term. From the standpoint of what you feel as just a person out there trying to make things happen, do your job, we're in a recession. Anecdotally, just from interacting with people who are either searching or considering selling their homes and conversations I've had with them about their motivations and their concerns, lots and lots of companies in Silicon Valley are talking about all the things that we mentioned in past shows. They're talking about layoffs. They're talking about not backfilling positions that are vacated, and generally just contracting what they do, and that is a recession. So when that starts to hit, people are going to feel it, and it could feed a cycle of bad things that ends up pushing the market down even further, right? And of course, at the same time, as we are already experiencing recessionary influences, we are fighting inflation. And to fight inflation, you reduce interest rates, you increase interest rates, but to fight recession, you lower interest rates. So we're not able to address recession because we're still fighting inflation. It's a catch-22, and we're also not willing to do the more disciplined things on the spending side and the printing money side to reduce inflation, apparently. So the burden ends up resting mostly on the backs of the taxpayers, you and I. So let's go ahead and just jump in. I thought this was interesting, particularly from a place like Fannie Mae, which usually toes the party line, whoever happens to be giving them the lines. But they project real domestic product GDP to be flat at 0.0% growth and to decline 0.5% in 2023, both on a Q4 compared to Q4 basis. So they're comparing the fourth quarter of the year to the fourth quarter of the previous year. So that's what they're referring to there. We expect modest economic growth over the second half of the year as large swings in net exports that previously dragged in the first half should boost GDP over the latter part of the year. However, in light of expected continuing tightening of monetary policy and global economic weakness, we expect a further slowing in housing activity and sluggish consumer spending and business investment growth. So that's an interesting statement because it sort of contradicts what comes before, right? So in the near term, we expect modest economic growth near term. Okay, so maybe it doesn't contradict itself too much. Over the second half of the year, as large swings in net exports that previously dragged in the first half should boost GDP over the latter part of the year. But then they go on to say, tightening monetary policy, global weakness in the economy, they expect slowing. So moderate recession occur in 2023 along with weakening in the labor market. And I think we're already seeing signs of that. I don't think this is a way off in 2023 thing. I think that perhaps people won't really just grok it until we hit December, and a lot of those employment we gains that are all the short-term style employment go away, and unemployment jumps again. But we'll have to see. My call, I'd love to hear from all of you in terms of what you believe the reality is going to be, or what you expect to happen based on economic indicators that you're seeing. I'm always happy to have that conversation. I would love to be talked out of being depressing. So feel free to reach out. You can find me at soldbyrobert.com to start that conversation. Headline inflation has moderated over the past 2 months. However, this is largely due to significant decline in gasoline prices. And I haven't seen a significant drop in my area of gasoline prices. So that doesn't reflect what my reality is as I just filled my tank. Core inflation, along with food prices, continue to remain well above the Federal Reserve's target following the completion of our forecast. The August release of the Consumer Price Index, let's see, over the month, the 6.3% on an annual basis, it showed up core price rising 0.6% over the month and 6.3% on an annualized basis, an acceleration of 0.4 from July. Given this, so an acceleration in the inflationary influences, right? So an acceleration in how much things are increasing in prices. Let's see. Interest rates anticipate an additional 75 basis point hike at its September meeting, which we got, though markets are partially pricing in the possibility of a full 100 basis point increase. I was betting on a 100 basis point increase. I wouldn't be surprised if we see one in the coming months. Simply because if we're going to fight this inflation, we have to raise interest rates. And as I've mentioned before, it wouldn't surprise me if we see double-digit interest rates on mortgages. Our baseline forecast is for the Fed funds rate to top out at 3.5 to 3.75% range in early 2023, but we see upside risk to this terminal rate. So, and I think we should take this as quite possibly the most optimistic take on how these things may unfold. As we've discussed before, for those of you who took the ride along with me back in 2007 when the podcast started all the way through the whole downturn, you know that this is the kind of things that they were saying about the market, and these ended up being far short of what the case was. These were far more rosy estimations than what we ended up experiencing. Doesn't mean Fannie Mae's wrong all the time, but I do tend to notice that they tend to try to put these in a light that are at least as optimistic as they can be, to try to give them as much of a fair turn as possible. Now, this one is interesting, and I think it represents a lot of smartness on the part of builders. Housing starts rebound, builders aim to win buyers. So we'll cover this, but it sounds like home builders are getting the message that they need to start catering to the lower price point. Now, remember, builders for a long time were emphasizing multi-homes in terms of construction, and they were emphasizing more luxury homes, higher end homes. And that's not a sustainable business right now in today's reality. So this is a welcome shift in the philosophy of builders. Despite an unexpected, and I'm reading directly from the article now, despite an unexpected jump in new construction in September, demand for new homes is falling due to high prices and mortgage rates. Builders are lowering their asks to boost buyer traffic. Exactly what they should do. That makes a lot of sense, but it also changes the kinds of homes that they'll be building, right? Even as demand for new homes fizzles, about a quarter of home builders are reducing their prices to attract more buyers as foot traffic falls. Single-family construction jumped 3.4% in August. The Commerce Department reported Tuesday. Economists are calling it a surprising bounce back after 5 consecutive months of declines. Now, I've read this already. We don't get a lot of insights into why there was a boost. So what I'm guessing is some of these builders may have been so far along in the process that it made more sense to move forward with it, with a new philosophy, with a new price point that they're aiming at. So I don't know what may have changed relating to what they're building. I would guess that they would have had architectural drawings done first. There was no need to guess. They would have had all architectural things set up first. But the fact that we saw a boost in construction in August is good news. And it may represent an opportunity for buyers who really do still want to buy, even at current interest rates, to get a potentially good deal on brand new construction. Now, I want to go, since I always like to pick on Lawrence Yun, I'm sure Lawrence Yun is a wonderful guy. He's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, who I frequently give a hard time to because he definitely is carrying the party line for the Association of Realtors. But let's see, lays the blame for the new home market slump squarely on mortgage rates. I don't think that is wrong, but I also think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Mortgage rates, absolutely. But we got to such a crazy place. It wasn't long ago, you and I were discussing how in certain areas, home prices were up 20% from the previous year, 15%, 18%, 22%. That's not sustainable. And at some point, something gives up. According to, let's see, material prices, including for lumber, have been moderating, and fully completed homes are selling fast. Unfinished homes that remain under construction are the ones sitting on the market for long periods. The NAHB, National Association of Home Builders, agrees that with Yun's assessment. Buyer traffic, quote, is weak in many markets as more consumers remain on the sidelines due to high mortgage rates and home prices. And that's, I think they covered it a little bit better by mentioning that home prices were just insane, that are putting a new home purchase out of the financial reach for many households. But I suppose the argument there would be that the reason why it became out of reach at the higher end was simply it made the payments so much higher. So I guess you could always say it circles back on the mortgage problem. If you solve the mortgage problem, the argument here seems to be that you would solve the purchasing problem. Multifamily properties continue to shine. Construction climbed to its best monthly performance in 35 years. Apartment demand has been strong, with rents rising at a historically high pace. Of course, that doesn't help you if you're in the market for a single-family residential. All right. Now, as I don't want to get into all the details of our local market numbers, but what's interesting is weekly active inventory is up 28% year over year, and this is a national number, and new listings are down 10%. We are absolutely mirroring this data. This is what we are seeing in our local market, but worse. We're seeing inventory up, in many cases, more than 28%. We are seeing new listings down by more than 10%. And we are continuing to list more homes than we sell, which simply adds more homes to inventory. For all the details on that, as I said, go ahead and check the market reports and the replay for the coffee and real estate for September to get all the nitty-gritty numbers on that if you'd like to check that out more deeply. Interesting one here as well. Mortgage demand rises for the first time in 6 weeks, despite those high interest rates. This may be a reflection of the market responding correctly, meaning sellers are lowering their prices, something that we've seen a lot of here. One additional piece of information that I shared in my market analysis for the communities that we cover showed lots and lots of homes with lowered prices, with Gilroy having the highest number of homes on the market that have had their prices reduced. The average contract interest rate for 30-year fixed-rate mortgages with conforming loan balances or less increased to 6.25%. So definitely higher interest rates and definitely continuing to appear to move that way. And I don't think that's unexpected. We talked about what the Fed was doing, what they are doing, what they're going to be continuing to do, and it's really all going to continue to move that way. Applications to refinance a home loan, which are usually very sensitive to big rate swings, actually rose 10% for the week. Now that's an interesting one. Why would folks refinance at these rates? Because there is no time in recent history when rates were this high. So the odds of these folks refinancing at a more advantageous rate is really low. So why would they do that? Although they were still 83% lower than the same week 1 year ago, but in 1 week it went up. So that's an interesting one. And I guess we could simply chalk it up to potentially the season, right? The selling season, buying season. I also think it would be interesting to theorize, because remember, but this is refinancing, right? We're talking about refinancing here, not buying, excuse me. So why would you refinance? It could be to pull out equity, which would be an interesting one. Are there folks concerned that they're not going to have enough liquid assets, so they're pulling out more money on these? I would love to find out how many of these refinances were cash outs. How many of these people, because there's no logical reason to do a refinance where you're not doing that, right? If you've got a loan that you got any time in the last 10 years, you are not anywhere near 6.25%, right? So I really want to understand why that is, but sadly, this does not go into that and doesn't give us the details. So I'm doing a little bit more research trying to figure this one out, but I think there is potentially a scary layer to this, where if we get folks more leveraged on homes, right? Because one of the things that we talked about that could help preserve a real big downturn in real estate is the fact that so many people had really great loans at really low rates, and now probably their monthly payments are actually pretty reasonable. But if we have folks that are in positions where they feel the need to refinance so they can pull money out, which is the only reason I can think of to do this, reach out to me if you can think of another one. What we end up with is folks who are more indebted relating to this house, and obviously with lower equity, because if they're pulling money out, that by definition reduces their equity and makes them more susceptible to a market downturn negatively affecting them in the future. If they're taking out a new loan and taking out money and boosting that indebtedness back up so that they owe, so that they're up to the full 80% on the loan, if homes really do take a dip, they potentially end up being upside down, and we get a repeat of what happened last time. So this one, although casually mentioned among other things, is one of the scarier things that I see in this. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it, but I'm going to keep an eye on it and see what else we might learn from it. Okay, next, 30-year mortgage rates hit 6.7%. Home buyers are facing payment shock. This talks about ways to save, but I thought that this was an interesting one. It came out on the 23rd, so only a few days ago. And obviously, it's the most recent information. If you go up on any website and start doing a search for what interest rate you would pay, I'm trying to think of off the hand. What's the one that I tend to use here? Market Leader? No, that's a different thing. Just Geeks, the Finance Geeks site. If you go there and check out what their tool for finding a loan says in terms of what your interest rate would be, or for a refinance, these are on the mark numbers in terms of what folks can expect to pay. Home prices have eased over the last couple of months. They are still up 13.1% from a year ago. The only community we covered over this last August that hit that number of 13.1% was Gilroy. As I said, San Jose and Santa Clara County overall were down in terms of sales prices, and Morgan Hill was up, but single digits, not anywhere near 13%. So again, our local area is not doing as well as the nation on average, which is not unusual, but always a little bit disquieting. Finally, I wanted to hit mortgage payments up record year over year. On Friday, the average 30-year mortgage rate hit 6.7% for 0 points and top tier scenarios, right? So you're not a subprime borrower. You are a excellent risk. You have an excellent credit score, and you're paying 6.7%, and you're getting 0 points on that loan. This is the highest rate in 14 years, and it's close to the highest rate in over 20 years. 6.76 will be the highest since early 2002. And now this is a graph of the mortgage, and obviously my podcast listeners can't see it, but what we're looking at is a 30-year fixed mortgage rates going back to 1976. And I show this because it really, I think, should calibrate people to what happens with interest rates and how high they have been in the past. Now, the gray areas, and obviously my podcast listeners can't see this, so I'm going to describe this for you. Back in 82, we had a recession and interest rates were over 18%, creeping up on 19%. We had another recession in January of 91, and interest rates were around 10%. I got into real estate in 88, and right around there, they were just shy of 12%. But I can remember 14% in 84, 85. I used to kind of hang out with my grandfather, who was a real estate broker, and I can remember those days when we were at 14, 15%. And of course, I was in high school when the big one hit in 82. But again, I can recall people complaining about 18% interest rates on your mortgage. As we go along here, we can see interest rates steadily declining all the way up until 2021, where we now have seen this big jump as of heading into 2023. So January 2023 obviously hasn't happened yet, but these are the Freddie Mac 30-year rates, and we're up at almost 7% in those rates now. So for those of you in the podcast, if you could see it, and of course you can't, that gigantic peak of 18% plus in 82 with gradual declines, and we are seeing a dramatic increase from January of 2022 right up to now. It gives us I think a great visual on this, but again, for the folks who are listening, it is a dramatic increase. It is the classic hockey stick where the hockey stick is straight and then it suddenly jumps straight up. And I just wanted to share that to make folks who haven't lived through these other decades where interest rates were insane to realize, yeah, they can go there. They can go that high. All right. Following graph shows the year-over-year change in principal and interest, assuming a fixed loan amount since 1977. This is above the previous record increase of 50% in 1980. This assumed a fixed loan amount. If we add in the year-over-year increases in the house prices, payments would be up around 65% year-over-year for the same house. And this is another one of those crazy hockey sticks where you see the year-over-year percent change, principal and interest payment. And this is focused on the payment. And I like to show this because this is the impact on a buyer. These are numbers that directly hit you. So basically an over 50% increase, year-over-year percentage change in your principal and interest payment. That is a whole lot of money and is one of the driving factors behind the slowing down of purchasing or the compression of purchasing, meaning buyers have to go to a much lower price point. And again, I think this is good data to feed buyers trying to find solutions for buyers on a lower budget. It's the only way they can make this happen. So I'm encouraged by what we're seeing from builders. Builders clearly grok what's going on. I am not encouraged by the financial elements at play right now and where we're heading. So I still advise folks, if you're a buyer, I think that opportunities are going to be presenting themselves. I would strongly suggest that you continue to have an active search going in the area where you're interested in to calibrate you to what's going on. You're going to be able to, in real time, spot these changes as home prices come down, as the listing for that 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in that neighborhood normally is $800,000. Now you're seeing it at $710 or $700 or $690. So you will be so calibrated in that when the right moment comes for you and the numbers all work, you've already got this storehouse of knowledge that you've developed over the period of time that you've been looking at these. For sellers, this I think is just more data that you should accelerate your plans to sell if that's something that was on your radar sometime over the next 2 years. Not only do I think that this recession is not going to contain itself to 2023, but I think it's going to be worse and it's going to last longer than is currently being promoted as the go-to headline for all of this stuff. All right, folks. I wish I had better news. I guess it's better. And see, the problem is it's not better news for buyers because the cost of money is so high. But always try to take some level of comfort that when we stop fighting inflation and start fighting recession, interest rates will come down. So if you get yourself into a property at a current day interest rate, you in a year or 2 years when those rates come back down, you can refinance and take advantage of that. My goal for all of my clients is to get your housing costs fixed at a rate that you are comfortable with, so that your month-to-month expenses aren't going to go up as it relates to keeping a roof over your head. So that's we're coming into a period of time where I think folks can potentially do that realistically as prices continue to come down. And as I said, in our local market, I don't see anything over the next 6 months but increasing inventory as we continue to sell fewer homes than we list, and we just build up that overall inventory. All right, folks. As always, the goal is to leave you with more knowledge on the table than I take up in your time. I hope we've accomplished that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to all of you next time.